All right.
Say about her too.
Take it away, Brooks.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for inviting me, Fran and Karen, and for giving me an opportunity to talk here. And yes, I was a former board member of the Untitled chapter, and we used to have a lot of fun coming over there. And you know, as things go on, we didn't like driving at night as much anymore, and we got busy with other things. But now I'm president of People for Protecting Peace River. That's what 3PR stands for. So I have a presentation for you tonight, and let's get right into it. Okay, so this is our backyard. And I just start with this because this whole presentation might be a little bit depressing, and I like to lighten it up a little bit here and there with a couple of photos. This plant started out with 1 or 2 plants a couple of years ago, and now this is our grain field behind the house, and it's really great, especially in the dry time of the year. So let's go into the subject we have. Phosphogypsum. You've probably heard the word, and it is the waste product of phosphate mining and fertilizer production. What is that? Well, this is we call it a cradle to grave production. It starts with phosphate strip mining in the interior counties about 50 miles east of where you're at, and ends up with the production of fertilizer, which is phosphoric acid, and a waste product called phosphogypsum. And the reason I mentioned phosphogypsum is because of Piney Point. And I'm sure most of you have heard about Piney Point recently. Last month, it was all over the news. But in reality, this has been an ongoing problem for many years. So this is Piney Point. And the pond in the foreground there is the problematic one. They had to drain over 200 million gallons of this processed, contaminated, polluted water into Bishop's Harbor, which leads into Tampa Bay out there. And it's just a shame. But there are really no good solutions for what to do with these gypsum stacks. And they actually exacerbated the problem with this one by allowing dredge material to be dumped into one of these holding ponds. Piney Point was no longer in use as a fertilizer production facility, but for about 20 years, but it was used for other things. And your Florida Department of Environmental Protection had a big hand in creating this problem. So this cradle to grave situation that I spoke about starts here, and hopefully you can see this map. The red and the gray areas are those active mining and old mining that has been done in the heartland, mostly eastern Hillsborough, eastern Manatee County, western Polk, and most of Hardy County. That's the county where I live. So the area that's been mined is probably somewhere around 400 square miles. It's been strip mined. The soils have been churned up to a depth of 50 to 70 feet. And you see some of the brown areas near the bottom are proposed mining, future mining. The company that mines all of this is known as Mosaic, and we're trying to stop these remaining areas from being mined. This is strip mining. This has been a while since this was mined. probably either it was before reclamation was required, or they're just behind on their reclamation, which is not uncommon. So vegetation has grown on the spoil piles. These areas in between the spoil piles, open groundwater really are the mine cuts. We'll refer to these as the mine cuts. And this all starts with bulldozing the vegetation off of the land, whether it be agricultural land or native lands, even wetlands. Some of the wetlands, quite a few of the wetlands, FDP is allowing to be mined because they would be too difficult to mine around. Once this topsoil is pushed off, then this drag line goes to work, mines down another, or digs down another 40 feet or so to take off what is known as the overburden. And this overburden is set aside, and the matrix, a layer called the matrix, is exposed under that. This matrix is a layer that contains phosphate, sand, and clay. And of course, the company is looking for the phosphate. So this material is brought up and dumped in an area where it can be slurried. And then the slurry is pumped back to a flotation, what is known as a flotation plant, via these pipelines. You see a pipeline in the foreground of this picture here. So at the flotation plant is where the separation, it's done with chemicals, a huge amount of petroleum, and then fatty acids and amines are used to separate phosphate out from the sand and clay. Here's a view of, once again, strip mining. And if you can imagine, this giant drag line is working its way back and forth across these areas. And as it goes, it's piling the overburden, which they don't use, into the previous mine cut. And then when each mine cut is finished, they move to the next area and so on, and work back and forth. The white area that you see in the middle there, that is known as sand tailings. And sand tailings is that sand part of the matrix that was dug from 40 plus feet. It's brought back from the float plant because it was separated away from the phosphate, and it's brought back out and fill in the mine cuts. So they usually run out of this part, don't have enough, so therefore wetlands are created. But this is not sand that you would find near the surface of the mine, but it's from down deep. And I've seen this. I always wondered what that smell was. There's like a kerosene-like smell if you happen to be on a road near the mine. And a phosphate miner himself told me that's what it is when this sand is pumped back out and bulldozed across, there's this kerosene smell. So that's residual from the float plant. And yet another view of this reclamation is what's going on here, is really what they call this, reclaiming the land. Now this view is a view of a clay settling area. And the third part of that matrix, besides phosphate and sand, is clay. And that can't go back into the mine cut because it's too unstable. It takes too long for the for the clay and the water to separate. So it has to be pumped to these holding areas, which are probably a lot of them about 60 feet high, and they can be over a mile wide in the area where the water part is. So these are giant dams where the clay is decanting and it takes decades to decant. Even then, it's not. It's only a crust with pudding underneath. So there's very little use for these areas, and this would be about 40% of the post mining area. So next time you see a sign that Mosaic has put up, you might have a little different view. My question is always, well, you know, you wouldn't need to reclaim the land if you didn't destroy it in the first place. So here's, sometimes we regard this a little humorously, but I don't think our friend here did at the time that mining was going on right in his backyard. So DeSoto County does not yet have strip mining. So the People for Protecting Peace River, our efforts are largely aimed at stopping Mosaic from getting into DeSoto County in the first place. They already own the land, but they want to have it rezoned at this point from agriculture to phosphate mining. And first try, they were unsuccessful. We were able to get a no vote on that rezone hearing, but they're coming back for another vote. So this is a billboard. This is actually a billboard on Highway 70 as you enter Arcadia. So let's take one of those breaks here. And this is Vaccinium Staminium. And I always love this plant. March, April, it blooms like this, and it's near a pine tree. I guess it's a pine flatwood species, but it just always reminds me of the many smaller shrubs and plants and things that you're not going to see in a reclaimed area. They just require the specific hydrology and soil types and you know, an intact ecology that to grow these kind of things. So phosphogypsum. So phosphogypsum is what is the end product. We talked about cradle to grave, and so far I've covered phosphate strip mining, and now we move to the area of the gypsum stacks. And this map will show you the 25 or so that are located throughout Florida. In the inset at the top, there's a few. There's a couple over in Riverview, and then Piney Point is on your lower left there. And these stacks have all had problems. They have, in 2016, this one in the center, New Wales had a massive sinkhole that went into our aquifer hundreds of feet below. Of course, Piney Point we've heard about recently, and Riverview has had its problems, and the list goes on. Really, I won't labor here. This is another view of New Wales, which is near Mulberry. And okay, so up to 200 feet tall in Florida. And I should say also that there are probably 70 of these throughout the United States, but we have about 25 in Florida. So you see this giant lagoon on the top, which is processed water, probably 1 billion gallons in some of these stacks. And this water is radioactive. It is laden with heavy metals, lead, cadmium, arsenic. There's a whole list. And it's radioactive with radium and uranium because it's concentrated. Natural radium, but radiation, but it's because of the process, it becomes concentrated. So again, this water is decanting out of these stacks and forming this phosphogypsum, which is the solid. Another view of new whales. So you'll see these giant white mountains. Sometimes they're covered with soil and vegetation. They'll cover them up with a little topsoil. And I'm just slowing us down here a little bit so we can take a breath. He's wondering what's going to happen to him. Now here's river view on the Alafaya River, which empties right into Tampa Bay. And there are two stacks here, and they've cosmetically fixed these up with, again, the topsoil and some vegetation. But you see the processed water still on the top. The thing about Riverview, as with other stacks, they sit near minority low-income communities. And it doesn't surprise me. I don't think it surprises you either. This is a church in the foreground here. So this becomes a environmental justice issue. This is a view of the fertilizer production plant where the phosphoric acid is produced. And I think I mentioned near the beginning that for every ton of phosphoric acid that is produced, 5 tons of phosphogypsum waste is produced. This is what is known as the Uncle Sam stack in Louisiana. It's on the Mississippi Delta. It is shifting laterally. It had threatened to collapse a couple of years ago. It is set on very soft clay soils. There you see another view actually on the river itself. And this stack again is near minority communities. So the next 2 slides I have here are just a partial list of the accidents that have happened with these phosphogypsum stacks. And I'm not going to read them all. They're there for you to look at, but maybe highlight a couple things. Of course, Piney Point is the most recent. J.R. Simplot is a company in Idaho. The Uncle Sam stack is a mosaic stack in Louisiana. There's the 2016 sinkhole that released 215 million gallons into our Florida aquifer. And then Piney Point, and you'll see Mississippi Phosphates, which is a Superfund site now, and Piney Point, which probably should be. They have reared their ugly heads just regularly. PCS is in North Florida. There's Mississippi Phosphates, and Riverview has had breaches that dumped into Hillsborough Bay, causing fish kills. Piney Point again. Mulberry Phosphates was the company that owned Piney Point when it was an active stack. The last company, I should say. They had an accident at a different gypsum facility, which some of you may remember killed everything in the Alafaya River all the way into Tampa Bay. And there's our 2016 sinkhole after it had drained out. So, yeah, giving back to our communities. I mean, you know, how much are we giving back compared to what we take? So, in February of this year, February 8th, to be exact, we, our group and about, what is this, 15 or 17 other groups filed a legal petition to the EPA to take back regulation of phosphogypsum as a hazardous and toxic waste. So when this was declared a hazardous waste, the EPA, this happened in 1990, EPA also exempted mining materials from this as hazardous waste, particularly phosphogypsum. So it was allowed to be stacked and just with no use allowed, but it did not have to be treated as a hazardous or a toxic waste, if that makes any sense. So it's been under-regulated. Regulation has been left to the states, and disastrous results all through the country. So when we launched this campaign, we also did some PSAs that I'd like to share this one with you at this point.
With it is that these phosphogypsum stacks are radioactive. They may or may not have liners underneath them, and we know that over time all liners are going to leak.
All new at 11, incredible video tonight. A massive sinkhole has opened at the Mosaic's New Wells facility in Mulberry.
Phosphogypsum and the processed water that comes along with it are one of the most toxic and hazardous waste streams, and also the most under-regulated waste stream. So right now, phosphogypsum is only regulated minimally at the state level, and that's why we formally petitioned the EPA to regulate it at the federal level.
So we take a breath here, and it's about the little things. I think, if I look at this picture, I would have to say we got to protect the small things, because they make up the bigger picture. And you guys can help me with this. I think Polygolanana. And this is an example. It just struck me that, you have tiny little flowers, but the big picture is what it's all about. And I looked this one up. You correct me if I'm wrong. Syngonanthus floridalis, and I probably pronounced it wrong, but hatpins. So this is our the website for the phosphogypsum campaign. And when you first open that Phosphogypsum Free America, you'll see a petition there. That is a petition that invites you to petition the EPA to regulate phosphogypsum. And that is our website underneath, protectpeaceriver.org. I'll put that in the chat box also. And we're still working on this website to make it better. I have a person now that, and I think she's doing a great job. So with that, I want to thank you, Saranoa chapter. You guys have been a great supporter for several years now. And we certainly remember that constantly. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Mm.
And
Great job.
Yes, thank you, Brooks.
It's hard to hear, but it's so important to get the word out.
Yes, absolutely. I have a question.
Sure.
I've driven through these areas. I've never gone in and look, I couldn't fly in and look overhead. So this was very interesting to me. What about water? Doesn't the work deplete water in your county, and don't homeowners have problems with wells running dry? At least that was my impression.
Yeah, sometimes, or that does happen with the mining process, because they open the land, creates a drainage effect from the superficial aquifer. So we know people who have, if they had a shallow well, particularly with shallow wells, their well goes dry, they have to have a new well drilled, a deeper well, to get back down so they have a water supply.
Yeah.
That's one effect. And of course, the fear, I don't know, many people in Hardy County claim that their quality of their water has been damaged. Kind of stuff is hard to prove. Usually Mosaic will do something to help that person, drill them a new well or something. It's a small price for them, but they don't want that to be pointed. The other thing about the water use is they use a tremendous amount of water. And you guys near the coastal areas being asked to water your lawn only on certain days, or, well, they have a permit to use up to 69 million gallons of water per day.
65 million gallons. Wow.
Now, they don't necessarily use it all, but they use it for various things, including diluting their pollutant output to meet FDEP standards to enter back into our waterways.
Mm.
Brooks,
Yes,
I have a question about the settling tanks for the clay.
right.
It's so what happens when the clay settles out? Does the water eventually evaporate? Does it just become like hard pan?
Yeah, the water, if that flotation or beneficiation plant is active, they're reusing that water.
Oh,
But when at the point when that plant is no longer active or they're retired, these clay settling areas eventually have to be retired. So yeah, the water settles down or evaporates, takes a long time, like I said, decades. Then a crust starts to form over the bottom of that pond where the clay was. They've had a problem doing anything with it like agriculture because you can't get heavy equipment on there. It'll break through. And then there's a pudding layer. It just takes forever to dry underneath. So they push the sides in. Once it's firm enough, they push the sides down, and it's like a mound, if you will. And you can imagine, it's impervious to rainfall. And the thing is, you've disrupted your aquifers out there unimaginably.
Yeah.
wow. And this is like on top of the gypsum stacks.
Yeah, it's a separate issue from gypsum stacks, right? Yeah, there's all kinds of issues. And then you have chemicals in that part of the process as well. A lot of petroleum is used. It's incredible. And it's just dumped into the ground. I mean, it's dumped into these clay settling areas, and some goes out in that sand tailings.
Why do they use what petroleum? Is it like a surfactant or something?
Yes, I think it's either that or they do use surfactants. It's part of that flotation process that floats the sand away from the phosphate,
Ah,
and likewise separates the clay. They use a foaming. I think the petroleum damps down the foaming that occurs during this whole process. I can't get too much further into the detail on that. I don't know it. So, but I know that it's used, and I know a lot of it's used.
wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah. They aren't going to tell you that when they, when they offer you their offerings or put up their billboards, etc.
Right. Wow.
Brooks, another thing that I've noticed is when they build roads around these places of operation, invasives like lantana just pour in. I photographed the shrubs along the edge of the road. I'm sure you've seen that. So that's another problem, destroying the native vegetation and allowing exotics to take over.
Oh, I think the most prevalent thing out there is Kogan grass. I mean, if you've ever driven through the mine country, that's all you see. And of course, Kogan grass likes disturbed areas, and you have nothing but disturbed areas in the mining scenario. And their Mosaic has tried to address that issue. However, their way of addressing it, the problem is just as bad. They're flying helicopters spraying glyphosate out.
Oh, great.
It's like one of our
Oh my gosh.
members lived across.
Terrible.
Maybe they've stopped that now. I don't know, but it's you're not going to get Kogan grass under control. It's like, and Brazilian pepper lining the roads. And if you want to see something weird, there's a place called Stream Song, and this is the thing in the Fort Meade area that they've turned into a golf course.
Oh.
And you go out there, and it's basically unreclaimed land with Kogan grass everywhere. But these people coming in there don't know the difference. They don't know. They think it's beautiful. And it's inexpensive. It's like $200 to play a round of golf out there.
Oh,
They asked me to do some nature tours there a few years ago for a group, and we walked around this lake at their resort, and it was Brazilian pepper, and I could find very little nature to show them. It was not fun.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre.
Mhm. What about jobs, Brooks? I think doesn't the company say they're creating a lot of jobs in the area?
Well,
Or
they may try to. I know that there was a hearing in Manatee County this is 2017, I think it was. So that's like 4 years ago, where they were going through their permit process in front of the county commission, and one of the commissioners asked that question: will you bring new jobs to Manatee County? And they pinned him down, and he had to be honest and say, no, we're not bringing jobs. There won't be much added, because they already have their employees. They just moved them.
Oh,
They're not going to fire the people who worked in other counties and hire people, you may get a new person or two. Plus, this kind of strip mining doesn't require, in comparison to maybe coal mining or other industries, it does not require a lot of personnel. You might get the most people working at these fertilizer production facilities, maybe a couple of hundred people.
Mhm. Okay. Right.
So it's it's always that excuse, it's environment versus jobs, right? And it doesn't have to be that way, you can create other jobs that are environmentally friendly.
Right.
That was very enlightening.
Oh, yes.
We knew that it was bad, but just seeing those pictures, it just really brings it home. Yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to depress everybody.
No,
No,
you just enlightened
hard
us.
to
right.
No,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
that's what we need to know.
Yeah, we need to educate others too. So
Right.
this has been great. We appreciate it so much, Brooks. So thank you.
well, I appreciate your support.
Okay. Okay, so Karen, is Stacey here?
Stacey is here.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes, Stacey is here. She's
yeah.
ready.
Okay, I'd love to introduce Stacey. Stacey Matrazzo is the program manager for the Florida Wildflower Foundation. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with that group. And she's a Floridian and been educated mostly in Florida. She's a master naturalist. And she is going to talk about wildflowers and how we can advocate for them, for the plants. So take it away, Stacey.
Thanks, Fran. Let me share my screen. Is that looking good on your end?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm not sure how to follow what we just saw. That was incredibly enlightening. I hope that what I'm about to talk about is a little bit more uplifting, but there'll be lots of pretty pictures. So there's that. I am Stacey Matrazzo. As she said, I'm the program manager with the foundation. If you're not familiar with our organization, our mission is to protect, connect, and expand native wildflower habitats through our education, research, and planting and conservation programs. And we do this largely through donations that we receive from the sale and renewal of the state wildflower license plate. This is our old design. About 3 years ago now, we changed it. So it's a little more modernized and definitely a lot better looking. But if you have the old license plate or the new one, you are still supporting our organization. We get $15 for every sale and renewal. And these funds, along with donations and memberships, really allow us to do all the things that I'm going to talk to you about in the next 15 minutes or so. But I do like to encourage people, if you find our programs valuable or the information that we provide, consider becoming a member or purchasing the license plate. So we are the Florida Wildflower Foundation. Our focus is primarily wildflowers, although we do deal with, we recognize that diversity is very important. And so while we promote wildflowers, good habitat requires diversity. It requires more species than just wildflowers. But wildflowers are essential to this state's ecological health, to our economy, and of course to its beauty. They provide food and habitat for pollinators, birds, and other wildlife. And the pollinators in particular are especially important to us. 75% of the food that we eat relies on pollination, but our food crops don't provide enough essential resources for the pollinators They need native wildflowers and native flowering plants to supplement their diets. So wildflowers are really essential for the success of many food crops by providing that additional habitat and nectar resources. And of course, as I mentioned, it's part of our diversity. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but our wildflowers are a big part of our ecotourism, especially in the Panhandle, and they provide services that all plants do with regard to water quality, erosion, carbon sequestration. You guys are all plant people, so I don't need to go too deep into that. But of course, they're beautiful, they make us happy, and they just provide a lot to us and to our native wildlife. Florida is one of the most biodiverse states in the country. We have about 2,800 native plant species. We have more ancient species and more families than any other state. But we're also one of the fastest growing states in the country. And so to accommodate this growth, our natural lands are succumbing to increasing development. And as a result, we're losing this diversity of plants and animals. And the natural areas that we're losing or that are shrinking as a result of this, they're becoming more isolated, more disparate, and pollinators don't have access or getting between these areas, moving through our built environments. And in addition to that, we have non-native species coming in either intentionally or not. A lot of the plants that are used in landscaping for these new urban environments and along our new roadsides are, at best, they're benign and passed over by our pollinators, and at worst, they are invasives that disrupt our natural areas. So the foundation aims to educate people about this loss and help people and municipalities mitigate it by planting and preserving native wildflowers. And so our 3 areas of focus are, as I said, education, planting and conservation, and research. And we have a really robust education program. We have tons of resources that we have been producing. All of these are available on our website for free. We have handouts on monarchs and milkweed, on attracting pollinators to your landscape. We've just added a couple new handouts on creating a pollinator pot, wildflowers for shade, wildflowers for dry landscapes. We're working on one for aquatics as well. All of these, again, are free. You can download them on our website. We also have printed copies that we're happy to mail out to anyone who's doing an event or would like to have some. Everything except for the book. We did recently publish the book, myself and Nancy Bissett, who some of you may know. She's a board member of ours. She's an ecological restoration specialist and owner of the Natives Nursery in Davenport. She and I co-wrote Native Plants for Florida Gardens, which is also available on our website, but it's not free. Everything else is free. Of course, our website is the nation's most complete source for information about Florida's native wildflowers. We have over 300 plant profiles. I post a new one every Friday. We have a Flower Friday feature. So if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you might be familiar with that. But we do have a lot of information, not only on plants that are unique to Florida and species that are endemic or rare or of special interest, but also plants that you can find at your local native nursery and how to incorporate them into your landscape. On the website, we also have our What's in Bloom map, which is a map, an interactive map that documents native species blooming throughout the state. And you can use that map to get an idea of what might be in bloom in your area at a particular time of year, or you can send us your photos and help us populate that map. We are trying to grow it and make it more comprehensive, but we rely on people like you who are out hiking or maybe, in a natural area and see something in bloom. You can send it to us and let us know where you saw it. We can also help identify it if you don't know what you're looking at. So that's always fun to get those kinds of requests. And all of our research papers are also on our website, and I'll talk about our research projects in just a little bit. Each month we also offer a webinar. We've really had to pivot during COVID because of obviously we're not seeing people in person, but it's really allowed us to expand our reach and provide topics that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to. We partner with other people like the University of Florida, Florida Museum of Natural History. We had Doug Tallamy, if you're familiar with Doug Tallamy, he was our first webinar in COVID. But we have a lot of different people who have given their time to talk to us about pollinators and wildflowers. And all of our webinars are on our website as well as our YouTube channel, and you can watch them for free at any time. And then we've also created new content like our Wildflower Moment series, which takes a native plant and kind of introduces you to it, talks to you about how to use it in your landscape, what to look for, where to find it. And we're working on this pollinator pot series, which we have part 1 up, but we've got a couple more parts coming. So keep an eye out for that as well. And we also developed a curriculum, an activity guide. This is aligned with 3rd and 4th grade standards for Florida, but the activities are amenable to children of all ages, adults of all ages as well. But it covers topics like botany and pollinator interactions, plant adaptations. We even have a section on ethnobotany. And again, this is available on our website for free as well. So that's pretty broad brush covering our education programs. Another area of focus is planting and conservation. We work throughout the state to increase the presence of native wildflowers along roadsides in particular. In 2009, we developed a model county wildflower resolution, and it recognizes the historical, environmental, and cultural significance of our native wildflower species. And so counties who adopt this resolution are pledging to conserve roadside wildflowers through management practices like reduced mowing. And we work with them to educate them on things that they can do differently. The map you see here is divided into the state's 7 wildflower districts. All of the green counties have adopted wildflower resolutions. So we have 35 counties so far and 3 towns that have also adopted their own wildflower resolution. And then in 2014, the Florida Department of Transportation adopted a new wildflower management program procedure that offers guidelines for nominating natural areas. So if you see natural areas of wildflowers on roadsides, you can actually nominate them for to make them a designated wildflower area, which will involve special management, again, to help keep those wildflowers bloom, to not mow them at the wrong time or take out their ecological benefit. And so again, the map shows you the different districts. The Department of Transportation has, and each of these districts has its own wildflower coordinator. So that's someone that you can work directly with if there's something that you see happening in your district that you want to address. And you can work through us as well. Contact us if there's an area that you have found that has wildflowers that you want to see managed differently, and we can get you in touch with the right people. So we have a lot of volunteers who work with us on this, but we work directly with DOT as well as with counties and cities to protect these areas and to influence the management for the better of the plants and the pollinators that rely on them. We've also just completed 2 3-season surveys of native wildflowers and grasses along FDOT maintained roadsides in District 2 and 3. And I don't know if I can go back, but that's the North Florida, Big Bend area, and then Central Florida region. And we have already started sharing those results with FDOT as well as with utility companies. Rights of way and utility properties are really important opportunities for us to work with because they are, land that often has a lot of good wildflower populations, and it's an area where we can influence the management of it. So we've already been working with them the other thing that we'll be doing with it is using it to promote ecotourism. And what you see on the right-hand side of the screen is our Panhandle Wildflower brochure. So we conducted these seasonal surveys in the Panhandle several years ago and identified the main flowers you're going to see along the roadsides, and also developed a map to tell people where they can go see different populations. So it's a really nice big handout or brochure that you open up, and I think there's, I want to say 50 species inside with a photo and a little bit of information on it. And then again, there's a really nice map of the entire Panhandle highlighting different roads that you can drive along to see incredible stands of naturally occurring wildflowers. So we're going to be working on that for District 2, which is the North Florida region. And then hopefully we'll be able to do that for Central Florida as well. We also have grant programs. Seedlings for Schools is a program that has allowed us to establish more than 500 wildflower gardens on school campuses throughout the state. And this, we kind of partner with that activity guide you saw to really start teaching students about the importance of native plants, the pollinator interactions, and getting them acclimated to, you know, being outside and exposing them to gardening as well, but also working to achieve those Sunshine State standards. Teachers can apply for this in the spring, and we will mail order or ship plants to them in the fall so they can plant them for a fall garden. And then if they meet the requirements, which just involves maintaining the garden and utilizing it with the students and, you know, showing us how they're using it, then they're eligible to receive a second shipment in the spring. We also have our Viva Florida grant program, which is a landscape demonstration garden grant. And this provides funding for organizations, nature centers, botanical gardens, communities, to provide a demonstration garden, or, you know, so that we can show people how to use these plants in their landscape. There's an educational component to it. They have to have programming, and there's a good bit of requirements, but we just awarded our grants for this year, and we have 11 projects that we're funding around the state, including one at Selby Botanical Garden. So keep an eye out for that, since I think that's what you guys said is where you meet when we meet in person. But this is just a really great program to help put pollinator gardens in communities and really provide something that people can come look at and see the plants thriving, see how they can plant them with other things, and how they can use them in their own home landscapes. And this kind of parlays into this next thing I want to talk about, which is our kind of our newest effort, and it's certainly our largest effort right now, and that is building habitat corridors. I mentioned earlier how we are, you know, our state is developing pretty quickly, and as a result, we are losing that connectivity. Our large natural areas are getting smaller and more separated. And so what we aim to do is to help establish connections within those urban areas and make corridors or pathways of native plants that will allow pollinators and other wildlife to find the resources they need when they're moving through these built environments, and also give them safe passage to these other natural areas. So to build this habitat, you know, we're kind of, this is still a new thing for us, but of course the Viva Florida Gardens are a really good opportunity because they are putting native plant gardens in areas where there wasn't one before. And this also involves our roadside programs too. As I mentioned, we have a lot of volunteers in the different wildflower districts that work with us, not only to identify those existing areas and to protect them, but also to get engaged to plant things along the roadside too. You can see here is, I think this is up in McCulloch County. Well, Blountstown is Calhoun County, but there's different projects that we have with volunteers in that area who are going out and planting native plants along roadsides to really help enhance that ecological value. The Panhandle is where our most robust volunteer program is, and we've got about 700 volunteers up there that are working on that. So we're really using the Panhandle as a model to try and expand this into the other districts. The Panhandle has an advantage because it has Apalachicola National Forest and a lot of biodiversity hotspots where a lot of unique species exist. And it's a little more difficult when we get into the rest of the state, but there's certainly opportunities there, and that's what we're working on right now. And we've got some active engagement here in Orlando, where we're based, with the city parks departments to do some NOMO zones and some other restorations and demonstration garden plantings too, so that we can get those in city parks as a pilot program that we can start implementing throughout the state as well. And finally, we have research. Research is another primary goal of the foundation. We have an endowment with the University of Florida to support graduate students in horticulture. And since 2000, when we started the endowment, we've invested more than $1 million in research grants to look at things like improving commercial seed and plant propagation techniques. We've had genetic investigations conducted on certain wildflower species. And we've created a scientific database of over 260 Florida native wildflower species. And we did give that over to Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, who is now the repository of all of our database. We funded a lot of projects with the Florida Museum of Natural History. I mentioned them earlier. We work with Jarrett Daniels there and Hector Perez to look at plant pollinator interactions. We were funding some milkweed research to try and see how we can help get more milkweed into the commercial market, and just a lot of other research projects. And we fund our own projects too. We funded a study of economic and ecological benefits of roadside native wildflowers to show not only is there a value in having these for pollinators and for wildlife, but we were able to prove that proper management and reduced mowing on roadsides is an economic benefit to counties and to the Department of Transportation as well. And then the picture you see here is another project we're working on at Pear Park here in Lake County, where we're testing different methods for controlling weed seed germination in large scale roadside and restoration plantings. So, we deal with this a lot when we are trying to establish wildflower areas on a mass scale, particularly on roadsides where we're already dealing with weed pressure. And so we're examining a few different approaches to hopefully make that weed seed issue a little bit less, and to allow our seeded wildflower plantings more opportunity to succeed. And so that's kind of just a brief overview of what we do and how we advocate on behalf of Florida's wildflowers, pollinators, Florida's natural habitat. Wildflowers are really a gateway species for a lot of people. They're beautiful, they're attractive, they engage people, and that just gets them to pay closer attention to the intricacies of our natural world and really start understanding how everything is interconnected. And so our efforts try to take that interest further by helping people understand the bigger picture, that wildflowers are a key component in many of our ecosystems. They're relied upon as food and habitat by so many species of wildlife. And so we're trying to find ways to show people how they can play a role in preserving and conserving wildflowers and native plants. So, how can you get involved in natural areas, and what can we do there to help preserve what's already existing? How do we work on roadsides to identify these important native plant areas and preserve them? And then what can we do in our home landscapes too? Because it's all as equally important. The natural areas are incredibly important, but as we lose more and more of them and we have this more of a built environment, the simplest thing we can do is plant these things in our own landscape so that we can, again, provide that habitat and provide the resources that those pollinators need. So if you're interested in learning more about our efforts or getting involved with our organization, please check out our website. You can email me. My contact info is here. Definitely follow us on social media if you're into that sort of thing. We are all over the place and we're very active. So I think, yeah, please check us out and support us. And thanks for having me.
Oh, wonderful. Such great information, Stacey. Thank you. It's just very, very good. Do people have questions? Are there any questions?
I have a, does the wildflower co-op, the wildflower organization work with the Department of Transportation to time the mowings of the roadside plantings? I was just in North Florida and the wildflowers were absolutely beautiful, and it is it's worth the drive to see the coreopsis along I-10 and North I-75. Do they work with the DOT to time the mowing so that the tank is there for the next year?
We do. We have proposed mowing schedules, and as part of the state wildflower mowing procedure, they have taken our recommendations. The problem is that sometimes it doesn't trickle down. They have, most of the mowing is done by contractors, and so we do run into problems where things get mowed when they shouldn't. At the state level, it's pretty under control. When we get out of DOT's management and into county roads and roads that are managed by the municipalities, it does become a little bit different or difficult. But that's why we've got our boots on the ground, keeping an eye on it and checking in with us when things are getting mowed when they shouldn't.
And I noticed Sarasota and Manatee County are both not on the list of counties that promote not mowing. So is that just something we need to press our county commissioners to, or is there a form that we can send them to try to get them on board? Or
yes, we have the model resolution that you can download from our website. We have a lot of information on the website on how to get a designated wildflower area, or just even have that conversation with your county commissioners. We've got people who'd be happy to, give a presentation and kind of walk you through it, but we do have that information to help people. And certainly if you contact us, we can put you in touch with the right people as well. But yeah, it does start at that county level and just getting the ear of your commissioners and kind of being a bug to them to let them know this is important and something that has community support.
Erica, we should put that on our agenda for our board meeting.
Yeah, right.
I can send you what we have on our website if you just want to take a look at it, and again, let us
That'd
know.
be
if we can
excellent.
help.
That would be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you. We can't hear you, Erica.
You shouldn't have told me that I was muted. Pam Calendar's not in our meeting. We have somebody in our organization who is working in her whole neighborhood doing a corridor for pollinators and wildlife. And she's gotten Sarasota County involved and several neighborhoods in her area, and she's doing this fantastic job. Real inspirational. She was inspired by Doug Ptolemy.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
If you've seen him, you're a convert for sure.
We're going to see her yard in October. That's that's our October field trip.
That is
Right.
Calendar's yard. Yeah.
So did you say you have grants for that kind of a thing too? Do you offer grants for people who are doing wildlife corridors using wildflowers and native plants?
We do. This year's cycle just ended, so we won't be accepting applications until January of next year. But yeah, we do. The only requirement is that it has to be publicly accessible. So if it's an HOA or a gated, well, not an HOA, if it's a gated community, that usually excludes it, but really it's just, you know, it has to have public access and it has to have an educational component to it. And those are kind of the main things. There's a lot of other little requirements too, but
Okay,
yeah.
well, I'll have Pam look into that because this is going to be an ongoing thing
Mhm.
and it's not a gated community. So, yeah.
Great. Well, and I'd love to learn more about it. You know, as part of our mission, we want to do this and help people, but we also want to spotlight people who are doing this kind of work and maybe get in touch with them too, because, you know, we want to see how you're doing it and what are some things that we can learn from people who have the same goal as we do. But it'd be nice too, just to be able to share that story with other communities around the state and say, look what's happening. What's
Yeah,
there, you know?
yeah, we can put you in touch with her.
Yes,
So
indeed.
we have a hand up here. If you want to unmute and ask your question, I'm not sure who that is. D. George. Maybe not. Maybe she just put her hand up by mistake.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, hi there. My name is Deborah, and this is the first time I'm joining this, and I find it very informative. I do have a question. I live in Manatee County, and I am on State Route 64 in the Lakewood Ranch area. We do have a wildflower garden in a medium right next to the DOT. It's not very well maintained, if you ask me. But my concern is the amount of traffic right now. And should that be a concern to have the wildflower garden in the medium in the center of the roads that are now getting more traffic and construction?
A
Would that be
concern for pollinators?
Yes, my concern for pollinators. Just a question.
Yeah, we get that question
you.
a lot, and it's surprising. We had a study done with Jarrett Daniels of the Florida Museum of Natural History, who actually found that despite the fact that there are fatalities, obviously, between you know, pollinators getting hit by cars, the benefit of having that habitat on the roadside outweighs it, and the fatalities are a lot less than we would think. But the benefits of having it and the resources that are being provided are serving more than we are losing.
And
we
how would
have that study on our website.
Well, that's good to know. That's wonderful. How would I, who or how would I contact anybody with the maintenance of because I do believe they do mow it. And I've never really seen too many wildflowers in the wildflower patch. So
did you say it was a state road or a county
it's
road?
It's State Route 64. Mm-hmm.
If it's a state road, it should be managed by the Department of Transportation. So you would need to get in touch with that wildflower coordinator.
Okay.
And if you wanted to reach out to me directly, we do have everyone's contact information on our website. It might not be as easy to find as it should be. We're redoing our website right now. But you can reach out to me or anyone at my organization and we can get you that person's information as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I totally enjoyed this evening's conversation. Thank you.
We're glad to have you, Deborah. Thanks for joining us. All right, anyone else? What was really nice to have Stacey talk about all this wonderful education and uplift after Brooks. More sad, but important, very, very important presentation as well. And I will echo what Tom said. I just drove up. I didn't drive the highways, though. I drove the byways, and we went up some side roads, and it was just the North Florida was just incredible, even on those county areas up that way. So,
and the pitcher plants are blooming now. This is the month they bloom. So
yeah, well, those aren't on the roadsides that you can see.
well, oh yeah, well, they were.
There's actually there's a lot of them on the roadsides.
Yeah.
Up north in the Panhandle, right?
Yeah,
in the
yeah. We didn't go to the Panhandle. We were up.
Yeah, let's pull on more area.
Cool. All right.
Okay.